Khaki Labs, Khaki Tours, Amrita and Farooq for inviting me this evening to speak on a subject which has been the sort of object of fascination for some time. I started writing the book, I started writing a book exactly 5 years ago to the month. It started it in July of 2018. And 5 years later, I wanted to introduce to all of you actually the work which has been done, and it's an entire series of 6 volumes. So here they are. This is what you're seeing on the screen now is the first volume. This has already been launched at the Palace at Baroda in April of this year. And the entire series is called Raja Ravi Varma, an Everlasting Imprint. This volume is called The Shaping of an Artist, after which today's talk is titled. The second volume is a resonant impression, and it deals with how the image actually goes from the painter to the public, largely through the agency of the Ravi Varma Press. And also what happens thereafter, how it gets picked up by theater, by popular artists, by advertisements, etc. So this is volume 2. Volume 3 is here, and this is called A Divine Omnipresence, and it deals with the images intended for worship. Not only is Hinduism covered, but also other religions like Christianity, Islam, the Sikh religion, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. And most also the various pontiffs and saints. All of them are covered in this volume. This is volume 4, and this is titled The Epics Imagined, and it deals with the images related to the Ramayana and Mahabharata. In the series, this is the biggest volume. It's 385 pages. The 5th volume is here, and this is Krishna Leela Nataka, and this deals with the Srimad Bhagavatam, associated Hindu themes such as the Gita Govinda, the Shukaramba Samvad, etc., and the plays. Your Shakuntala and all of them find a place in this volume. The last volume is this, which is Power and Enchantment, and it deals with images associated with people of power and the Maharajas, etc. And then, of course, the allure of the feminine. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 6 volumes, volume 1 again on top, dealing with a pictorial legacy which really has captivated the common man and of India, not just India, but really of the subcontinent and beyond. My question actually was, when I started writing the project, writing a book, I must be honest, I started by writing a book and it lands up becoming 6 volumes. The whole question was, is there anything new to be said? And what is different about these volumes? Well, very clearly what is different about this is that it looks at Ravi Varma not in isolation, but it looks at Ravi Varma in a larger context of the people who go about shaping the image of the artist, about what are the various influences, what is the backstage story of how these images are coming to be created. But it also looks at what happens after Ravi Varma has created the image, and largely the history and agency of the Ravi Varma Press. So here is a press which is created in the name of the artist. Interestingly, at no point in time did it ever belong to Ravi Varma, but it continues to carry on the brand, and it goes on to influence a whole series of things in our lives. So Ravi Varma actually becomes the central point of the narrative. So this is the first thing which is different. The second thing is it also brings in the time period where India is also changing. So as much as India is changing, so is the picture, so are the people, so is the mentality, and everything comes to be changed. And one, rather towards the end, becomes inextricably intertwined with the other. So this is actually the subject matter of all of this. So you're actually looking at over 1,800 images, and you're looking at somewhere in the range of 2,140 pages soon to come on the artist and the artistic legacy. Now, to to explain 6 volumes in a 40-minute talk, I mean, we all know it's going to be impossible to do. So I have to state what I am looking at today. So today I look at only the first volume, which has already been released in Baroda, and with a focus on what made Ravi Varma, or what aided Ravi Varma in creating the image. So we are actually lifting the studio veil and we are looking behind the artist into finding out how he creates the image. I'm also going to sort of get into some images in the book which have never been published before, sort of to give you a deco as to what really is different in this book series. And with this, I am going to start sharing my screen now. And we're going to start with this image. This is titled The Garden Gate, and it actually is featured only once in the entire series of 6, and that is in volume 1. This is actually the arch of the Kilimanur Palace. This is the palace in which Ravi Varma was born, did a lot of his work, and he also passed away in this place. There's also a very interesting backstory as to how this image comes to be featured in the book. And in a sense, it's also a journey about, it's also about my journey on how these images come to find a place in this book series. So I was appointed as the honorary curator of the Sree Chitra Art Gallery. And one of the first things which I actually did was to look at the present catalogue and compare it to the first catalogue which was made of the museum. And 1 or 2 paintings were not in the collection. So this was raised. I said, where are these paintings? And later on, it was found that 5 paintings were sent to the Raj Bhavan for display. And a lot of people actually didn't know what these 5 paintings were. So when we went off to Raj Bhavan to try and find which these 5 paintings were, we found this one, which is such a rare work, the Garden Gate. And this is by Ravi Varma's brother, Sree Raja Varma. Here is one of the things which is important is actually Sree Raja Varma was also very instrumental in Ravi Varma creating many of his works. And therefore, it is actually very prudent for me to put it in right at the beginning of volume 1. Here's another work. And this is a sketch of a horse. It's a watercolor. This is also in storage in the Sree Chitra Art Gallery. And it's it actually revealed another aspect of Ravi Varma's artistic likings. As much as Ravi Varma loved painting faces of people, especially women, he had this ability to bring out the best in them. He loved horses, and he painted very many sketches of horses and equestrian scenes of them jumping over things and all kinds of stuff. But here is one of his exceptionally beautiful watercolors. It's a preparatory sketch for one of his paintings of the Mysore stables. This also features in volume 1 and in volume 6. Here, this is a very rare painting of the family of Kilikepat Krishna Menon. This is Ravi Varma's first commissioned portrait, and this was in 1870. For the longest time, this painting was actually not, we couldn't trace it, but in 2019, I was able to trace this work, and it features for the first time in color. And in the series, it actually features in volume 1 as also in volume 6. Now, what is actually interesting here is that the person on the left of your screen was a judge. Therefore, Ravi Varma's first commissioned portrait was not by a member of a royal family, but by a person from the judicial fraternity, which sort of also gives you, somewhat validates what I'm also doing with Ravi Varma. This is now in the DAG collection and also was exhibited in Bombay a while ago earlier this year. This, of course, is the Duke of Buckingham being welcomed by the Maharaja of Travancore. Now, one of the things which these volumes do is it tries to explore and analyze the pictures. And the reason I put it over here, this has of course been printed before, it features in Rupika Chawla's book. But the reason this becomes important is because it analyzes what's actually going on and it gives us a deco into possibly what was going on at that point in time. I was always curious about the handshake. So you have the Maharaja shaking hands with the Duke of Buckingham as he arrives into Travancore. And the handshake is purposely obscured by placing the head of a man right in front of it. You will actually look, if you peer into the picture, you'll actually see a few people with their hands to their mouth. It could possibly be a sign of respect. It could also be a sign of shock, alarm, surprise, because the Maharaja was considered almost a sacred person within his kingdom, and you could not touch the Maharaja. And for him to be touching a European and shaking his hand may not have gone down well with many of the people. So when Ravi Varma paints this picture, and this is a very diplomatic picture, he intentionally obscures the handshake, which I would imagine is Ravi Varma's ability to say and not say at the same time, to see and not see at the same time. And this is actually the work of a very diplomatic artist, which you can see in this picture in front of you. I'm showing you another first time, and this is the book series has a whole series of archival material, including the catalog which you're seeing here. For the longest time, we did not quite know where these pictures were exhibited, where they went, and there was some amount of fiction surrounding Ravi Varma's presence in the exhibitions. For example, it has been stated over and over again that in the early 1870s, Ravi Varma exhibited in Vienna. But upon an examination of the catalog, you actually see Ravi Varma's pictures were never there. On the other hand, if you look at this catalog at Calcutta, the Calcutta International Exhibition, 2 of Ravi Varma's works were exhibited there. So what I'm trying to get to is that these books are very intensely researched. Every catalog has been looked into. We actually see whether Ravi Varma's works went there, what were the works which went there, and possibly try and even interpret why these works go into some of these places. The book has, and the entire series for that matter, has a whole series of sketches. And many of them feature for the first time. You see, sketches are very important in the shaping of an artist. Why? Because these sketches are closest to the mind of the artist before he gets into the final painting. Some of them are just little scribbles, but still you are able to discern what is on the mind of the artist as he goes about shaping the image. This, for example, is a very rare sketch. It's of an elephant, and it could have been interpreted in so many ways. But the presence of the shanga, which is the conch which you see at the back, and a whole bunch of regalia leads one to interpret that this was an attempt at an insignia of Maharaja Moolam Thirunal Rama Varma. That's why you see the RV. I initially thought perhaps this could be the RV of Ravi Varma, but I don't think he would have, I don't think this diplomatic artist would have been in a position to associate it with the elephants and the Shankar, both of which actually belonged to the royal family. Ravi Varma, you must bear in mind, was from the aristocracy of Kilimanur, but was not from the actual ruling family of Travancore. So Ravi Varma would not have associated his initials in the place of that of a Maharaja. So this sort of interpretation also goes on. What is interesting about this sketch is that very many of these elements, including the Shanga and the 2 elephants, continue to resonate in the insignia of the government of Kerala today. So, you know, here is where it actually begins, and makes it sort of a historically important sketch as well. I'm also going to show you another one, which is a prince on a tricycle. Now, why have I brought this in? Is because this painting gets exhibited in the Simla Fine Art Exhibition, and there is a very caustic review of this painting, and it says, you know, here is this prince on a tricycle, and he is wearing European attire. Why should he wear European attire? Why does he not wear the attire of a Travancore royal? And then, of course, the reporter goes on to say, the time has come where everybody now is going to be attired in European attire. So, here again, it comes back to how the public are viewing these images, not just the chromolithographs, but also some of the paintings when they get exhibited in the exhibition. One of that is the one which you're seeing on the screen now. I then move on to this painting. This painting is Sampatrao Gaikwad, and this is from the Royal Gaikwad collection in Baroda. The entire series, I must mention, it is an honor that the family has allowed the maximum representation of their works, of the works in their collection. From the Royal Gaikwad collection, which is considered the largest private collection of Ravi Varma's paintings, the maximum number of the works from the collection feature in this series. So in that way, it's also the series is a tribute to the Royal Gaikwad collection and the present custodians who've allowed all of this to come into the works. This again is one of, I wanted to point out, is that Ravi Varma takes so much of care when he goes about depicting the horse. The horse is absolutely, I mean, is one of the most kindly representations of this equestrian portrait. This one, this is an interesting work. The one on the left was called The Student, and it was exhibited at the Bombay Fine Arts Society exhibition, and it actually went on to win one of the prizes. The sketch of it, of course, is on the right. What is very interesting is most of the people would think here is the student, a man at study, etc., etc. But if you peer into the diary of Sri Raja Varma, you realize what is the focus of the artist's attention. In one of the diaries, of course, the diary entry is dated to a later date, but it just gives you the mind of the artists. He says, all of us went to the house of Sri Ram Pant to see the new gas lamp. So you must understand that these artists, both Ravi Varma and Sree Raja Varma, were immensely curious people. They wanted to see what was going on, the new things which are coming in. Is much like running into the new iPhone shop where you go in and then you want to check out what's the new iPhone. This is exactly what the artists were also doing. So they ran about to catch the new gas lamp. And this is possibly the reason why you have a gas lamp right in the foreground. And to contextualize the lamp, he sort of put in a student over there reading the paper. Both in the sketches, also in the painting, right in the foreground is the main protagonist of this work, the lamp. I'm moving on to the next one, which is this, and this is also on the poster of Khaki, Khaki's invitation. This is actually a very important painting. This painting is called The Brave Kusumavati, and Ravi Varma writes about this painting when there is a proposal to set up a museum in Trivandrum. It's called the Picture Gallery at that time. And what happens is Ravi Varma sends a list of paintings, and he says, here are a list of paintings which I think you should have for your museum. And what he said in the list, the first painting is The Brave Kusumavati. For the longest time, we didn't know where the painting was. In fact, all is that it actually featured in a 1911 book, a black and white illustration of it. And about a year and a half ago, I was able to actually find the painting. And this painting again features for the very first time in both volume 1 and 2. This was also very well received when it was exhibited at the Bombay Fine Arts Society exhibition in 1896. So one of the very important works. This is a painting of Dhatri, the Valiyarani of Vengunad Kolongodu. And this is almost to the end of both the artist's career, Raja Ravi Varma as also Sree Raja Varma. Why is this painting, and this features in print for the first time, why is this painting important? Is because it finally gets, it's the first portrait which is signed by both of the artists. Although Ravi Varma and Raja Varma, the brother, worked on paintings together from as early as in 1878. It is not until 1904, 1905 that Sree Raja Varma actually gets to co-sign the paintings with his brother. And this is the first in the series. After this, of course, it happens in Mysore as well. It is sad that Raja Varma actually gets acknowledged only way towards the end of not only his life, but also of Ravi Varma's life, because he passes away 1 year after the brother. Because Sree Raja Varma was very instrumental in the shaping of Ravi Varma's images. And so it is a very important thing to acknowledge him as well. And this is the first painting which actually acknowledges him with a co-signature. We're looking at another watercolor, which is in storage in the Sree Chitra Art Gallery. And this is the Dasara procession of Mysore. This does not have a final painting of a similar nature. Although in a letter in the Divisional Archives of Mysore, there is a note that Ravi Varma proposed to paint a picture of the Dasara procession for the Maharaja of Mysore. After the completion of the paintings, which are now in on display at the Jagan Mohan Palace, the commission is stopped. Largely because one could imagine they were very expensive paintings even at that time. So the second tranche of paintings were not commissioned. However, it's so rare to see that in the collection of the Sree Chitra Art Gallery in storage, Ravi Varma actually executed a little preparatory sketch of the Dasara procession. And this also features for the first time. This is another painting which is very important to the Ravi Varma legacy, and this is at the village tank, and this is Sree Raja Varma's last painting. Sree Raja Varma, as I had already mentioned, was Ravi Varma's brother, and this happens at the time when he is in Mysore. Sree Raja Varma's, it is said that Sree Raja Varma, immediately after he painted this picture, he passed away because he was taken away to Madras. There was they tried a surgical intervention for a stomach problem, and then he passed away immediately after painting this picture. This is another picture which is on display at the Raj Bhavan. One of the 5 pictures which we found in the Raj Bhavan collection along with the garden gate. This also features both in volume 1 as also in volume 6. I am now going to get into, so the pictures which you saw till now all deal with the first chapter, and largely Ravi Varma's life and the life of Sree Raja Varma. The second chapter actually deals with how Ravi Varma shaped the image and who were the people behind the scenes who were actually helping Ravi Varma create these images. And one of the first people which we must acknowledge is the gentleman which you see on your screen now, Bharani Tirunal Raja Varma. He was Ravi Varma's maternal uncle. And he was the first person who actually tutored Ravi Varma into painting. What you're also seeing on the screen right on top is one of the paintings of Bharani Tirunal Raja Varma, which is painted on ivory, and as also the painting at the bottom, which is a watercolor by him. What is important is, and all of these are in the Sree Chitra Art Gallery, what is important for art historians is that while most of them attribute the shift, the change from traditional painting to academic realism to Ravi Varma, in reality, it was not Ravi Varma who actually engineered the shift. It was the man which you're seeing on the screen now, Bharani Tirunal Raja Varma. In the first catalogue of the Sree Chitra Art Gallery, it was called the Sree Chitralayam at that point of time. James Cousins, who was the curator of the museum at that point of time, he acknowledges these paintings and he says that these paintings by Bharani Tirunal Raja Varma are the ones which depict the change into the new pictorial, I would like to use the word system, but This is where the actual change takes place from traditional painting into perspectival academic realism. And that honor and tribute does not go to Ravi Varma, it actually goes to Bharani Tirunal Raja Ravi Varma, and therefore slightly predates Ravi Varma, maybe by around 30 or 40 years within the Malabar area. Uh, in the book, especially in volume 1, it is the only book which has all the 4 known paintings of Bharani Tirunal Raja Raja Varma, 2 in the traditional style and 2 in the new style. The book also has a whole bunch of sketches which allows us to understand how Ravi Varma goes about, for example, depicting or capturing an ornament. It's a small little sketch which he does. And the what he's obviously done is he's gone to a sitter, if one could imagine was an aristocratic sitter who would not have given him too much of time. And he very quickly documents the the way in which the pattern of the ornament and also where the rupees go and where the emeralds go, which he would have clearly used later on to complete the work. So the book series gets into showing you some of these very rare ways in which the Ravi Varma shaped his image. There is a whole series of sketches of this episode. Ravi Varma was also influenced by poetry, Veena Numrok, and Ravi Varma executes a series of sketches on this before he actually composes the painting. For this particular painting, almost the entire series of sketches are there. So it actually gives you an idea as to how Ravi Varma first wanted to show it horizontally, and then he changes it to a vertical composition. Actually quite a fascinating exploration of the sketches before Ravi Varma arrives at the final composition. Ravi Varma also was very diligent when he documented certain things like architectural elements. Largely, his brother was more interested in these, but what is fascinating is that if you look at the sketchbooks, you realize that so was Ravi Varma. This sketch which you see on the left is almost an identical copy of a sculpture which you see on the right. And the sculpture is actually a Dwarapalaka from a temple which is very close to Kilimanjaro. So it is possible, and it may even be possible, that Ravi Varma was actually sketching this very sculpture, which is you seen on the left. The influence of European artists. You see, if you look, Ravi Varma had an extensive library. Ravi Varma bought book after book, catalog after catalog, and most of his sales were, most of the purchases were actually from stationery and bookshops in Bombay, Thacker and Co. All of these people, there are actually notes saying today we bought this from him, today we bought that from him. And this library continues to remain in the Kilimanjaro Palace Trust. I had the occasion and rather the privilege of being allowed to look at the Kilimanjaro collection, and actually sat there for over 24 days, scanning like a Xerox fellow, scanning every page, scanning every photograph, scanning the reverse of every photograph to see if there was a notation. And then when I came home with all of these images, then the pattern started revealing itself, as you're seeing on the screen now. The reclining Nair lady is painting on the right, and there's been a lot of fiction which has surrounded this painting. You've had a whole bunch of people comparing it to Edward Manet's Olympia, saying this is possibly the influence for Ravi Varma's work. But that's not true, because if you look at the illustration on the left, you can see that Ravi Varma almost copies the entire composition, the way in which the lady reclines, that little book perched at the, precariously rather perched at the edge of her bed, the way in which she's, that plush cushion, and even the pattern of the carpet, all of it is almost an identical replication of one of the European paintings. a lot of continental artists directly influenced Ravi Varma's works. But I'm going to dwell on this a little more because I wanted to sort of get into the fact that there's a way in which Ravi Varma, and you will see it across all of the volumes, that when Ravi Varma lifts out material from a European illustration, he has this magical way of Indianizing it, as he's done here. Because if I had not actually placed one next to the other, you would have readily thought that the one on the right was an Indian composition, and this is how he would have taken it by probably peering into one of those Taravats or something like that. This ability of Ravi Varma is one of the things which he brings uniquely to the way in which he shapes the image. Although he takes a lot of it out of European illustrations, I don't think it is it could entirely be called a European work. It is clearly his ability to synthesize the European and Indian aesthetic and making it Indian, unless of course you have a Ganesh Shivaswamy who comes and says, hey, listen, hold on, hold your horses there. This actually came in from a European work. Otherwise, this is entirely Ravi Varma's magic of making it an Indian image. I'm now getting into photography, and this is where a lot of the fact has been separated from fiction. Ravi Varma extensively used photographs. He had, as I said, when I looked at the collection in the Kilimanur Palace, they had a whole box of photographs, and there are some glass plate negatives. And when you look at them, I did one thing, and this is where even this Rangrasya comes in. What I did was I not only scanned the front because I needed it, but I also scanned the reverse of the photograph. Many of them even had notations as to who these people were. So we do know a lot now about the models who posed for Ravi Varma, not just Ravi Varma, but also of the entire set of artists who were working in the studio. Here is an example of how a photograph of Seth Lakshman Das is used for the painting. And if you actually place them one next to the other, you realize that it's almost an identical lifting or inspiration directly from the photograph, which Ravi Varma brings in. He makes, of course, slight changes to the background, etc. Some of the embroidery changes, but Ravi Varma largely uses it to exactly compose many of his pictures. Ravi Varma's using photography was a very interesting exploration, because all along I was under the impression that Ravi Varma was given a photograph and said, look, now you paint out of it. But the photograph which you're seeing on the screen now changed my view in relation to how Ravi Varma shaped the image or composed the image using a photograph. The photograph which you're seeing on the screen, of course, the sitter's face is almost entirely obscured, but that's not the focus of my attention. What you're seeing is there's another person who is captured in the mirror on the right, and that is Ravi Varma. So what you can see him notionally doing is he's actually telling the sitter, will you please sit like this? He's actually doing something there. And inadvertently, his image is also captured into the photograph. What this allows us to interpret is to say that Ravi Varma not only composed the painting, but he also spent a lot of time in composing the photograph itself. And the photograph component of the shaping of the image therefore becomes so very important in how Ravi Varma goes about composing his images. Look at this picture. And this picture is a photograph, of course, of a very young girl. And this photograph in this particular case is used by Sree Raja Varma for his painting. What is interesting is it is this very girl who also poses for Ravi Varma's Lakshmi. the very famous Lakshmi. And in that photograph, she stands against this backdrop and she holds two pencils in her hand. And both of these pencils go on to become the lotuses in Ravi Varma's Lakshmi. What is also interesting is that I've tried my best to find out who these people are, because it's very important for us to know who they are. And I was able to identify this girl as being Rajibai Malgaonkar. She was a Goan Kalawant who comes into Bombay, and she goes on to become the mistress of a wealthy businessman. And we're able to name her. And here I would like to also mention that most of these images did have names at the back. A whole bunch of them do surface. People like Rajibai Malgaonkar. You have Gaura from Baroda. She was a very famous Bharatanatyam dancer. And some people, of course, we are also not able to identify. But here I would like to bring in the point about the Rangrasya person. The fact is that if she was that important a model for Ravi Varma, there would certainly have been a notation somewhere in some of these photographs, because there are a whole bunch of them, and not in she doesn't feature in a single photograph. So I would come to the conclusion that she was actually a fictional model and was not a real life person. But there were other real life people, as you're seeing on the screen over here, who is Raghuvir, who is, oh God, wait, I'll come, that name will come back to me. Rajibai Malgaonkar. Rajibai Malgaonkar, and one of the, she's one of 4 sisters who actually modeled for Ravi Varma. I'm going to end over here because I would like to say that as much as I've tried to explore and find out who are the people behind the scenes, helping Ravi Varma shape his image, there are many instances where we also do not know who these people are. As in the instance of this, the girl on the right, that is a photograph, and evidently becomes the base for the painting which you're seeing on the left of your screen. But we don't know who she is. So the book, as much as you have 2,140 pages of Ravi Varma, which you're going to see shortly, I would also like to tell you that there is still a whole bunch of material which is yet to be discovered. And I'm hoping that we get opportunities and revelations as time goes on to help us understand this really prolific Indian artist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ganesh, for sharing your passion about the artist. It was a real pleasure listening to you. Could you tell us a little bit about his Bombay life? I'm sure our audience would be interested, since the majority of them, I guess, would be from Mumbai.
You see, the thing is, Bombay was very interesting for Ravi Varma because unlike his other cities where he went to, like Baroda or Mysore, or even Travancore for that matter, which you can actually discern within certain periods, Bombay was fascinating because every time he traveled, he would land up in Bombay and something or the other would happen. Ravi Varma actually had a studio in Bombay. We don't know the exact location of it, but I was able to actually find a photograph of the studio when it was in Bombay. I'm actually going to flip my camera now and show this to you from volume 2. What you're seeing on the screen is a photograph of the studio when it was in Bombay. We don't know where it is, but if you actually see there, and as a sort of how it says the Ravi Varma Fine Art Office of the Ravi Varma Fine Art Lithographic Press. So a lot of Ravi Varma's cosmopolitan influences actually did land in from Bombay. Not only the press also started in Bombay. We also have, a whole bunch of very fascinating things which happened. His, what was that? The Bombay Fine Arts Society exhibitions. He participated in practically all of them. And to somewhere towards the end of it, they say, you know, we're not going to let you show this painting. And then later on, they change their mind. This is the Shakuntala's impending calamity. They say, no, this time not you. But then they change their mind and then they say, yes, okay, we're going to show this painting over here. So that happens. And if you look at the newspaper reports of his work in or his presence at these exhibitions, they speak of a whole bunch of artists, but there's invariably an there's an entire paragraph dedicated to Ravi Varma's work. One of which is the brave Kusmavati. They say, oh, she's doing this, she's doing that. It got the prize over here. One of them is very caustic about Ravi Varma and says, you know, he should actually use photographs. I don't think he's able to do it without photographs. So, you know, these people are actually trying to also teach Ravi Varma how to paint. And all of this fascinatingly happens in Bombay. Interestingly, even the Rangrasiya episode, it does not happen to Ravi Varma, but it happens in Bombay to somebody else. Ravi Varma is actually invited to the courtroom by Justice John Jardine and Ranade. And they say, will you please come in and then take a look at the courtroom and the proceedings? And when they are there in the courtroom, they actually see this trial going on, but somebody else is the accused. And the wonderful thing about it is Ravi Varma's sitting, Raja Varma's making a note of the proceedings in court, but Ravi Varma's actually sitting there and sketching the court. And that sketch actually features in volume 2. It also features in volume 5. This wonderful little sketch of the two judges there, the princess in the middle. There's this a lawyer, you know, vehemently swinging his hand and arguing. All of that finds a place in all of these volumes. But Rangrasiya's episode did not happen insofar as Ravi Varma was concerned. But all of this happens in Bombay. Bombay is a very fascinating city for Ravi.
So I understand we don't know where the press was. Do we know where he lived, where he socialized?
We do know where
his friends in Bombay.
Oh yeah, we know a lot about his friends. He had, of course, Sri Rampant. Then he had Balakrishnan, who was the doctor. He had Dikshit, who was a lawyer. Ranade, who was a very dear friend of his. He had a whole bunch of lawyer friends. I don't know why he did. Then he had Dadabai Naroji. Then, of course, he had the Maharajas who were always coming in and going out in Bombay. Yeah, he had a major social life in Bombay. He was going to all of the theaters, the plays. Yeah, he went to a circus because he sketched the circus, and that also features in one of the volumes. So he had a very interesting social life in Bombay.
And how important was Alu Kharegat in his social life?
Alu Kharegat, insofar as the Parsi thing is concerned, Alu Kharegat was, I think, from Chennai. He was fascinated with the family. And he executed sketch after sketch after sketch of a Parsi family, which we could imagine was the Kharegat family. But the fascination with Parsis, I think, is more with the brother, who's very upset that they have to wear the headband and cover their hair. Such beautiful hair in one of the things, it says, such beautiful hair, and that's such a travesty that they have to cover it. So, you know, things like that. There's a lot of Raja Varma's interest in why women must be sort of, you know, need to cover their hair and then wear pardas and things like that. Yeah.
A question from Harshvardhan Nakra. He wants to know, can you give us a glimpse of the commission work in Lakshmi Vilas?
Commission, there are plenty of them. Yeah, just a second. Let us look at one of the commissioned works, actually, where he uses a photograph. I'm going to show that to you. Just a second. So that's one of the commissioned works of Maharani Chimnabai, and it is derived from a photograph. And there are a whole bunch of them. I mean, you have, of course, portrait of the Maharaja, two of the Maharanis, senior Maharani, then Chimnabai II. Yeah, you have a whole bunch of them. In fact, the largest collection of the largest representation of the Baroda The Royal Gaikwad collection is in these 6 volumes.
So somebody wants to know when they can expect volume 2.
Any time now. I am the original plan was to so this is Ravi Varma's 175th birth anniversary year, April of next year. It was intended to do one every 2 months. Of course, for me, that turned out to become the triumph of hope over reality, because you can't launch one in 2 months. It would have taken everything out of me. I think it would have taken more out of me than to write the volumes. So we are now doing we are doing a launch once in 5 or 6 months. So anytime now, we're just waiting for certain things to fall into place.
Right. This is a slightly technical question. Can you share an understanding of the technique or the skill used by Raja Ravi Varma in his oil paintings, or just paintings in general, and what differentiated him from other competitors?
Nothing much really, because insofar as the technical skill, it was exactly the same as anything else. It went through the same processes as any other European artist or any other Indian artist who was painting in the same medium. What, however, set Ravi Varma apart was not in the technical skill of painting, but how he composed the image and how he synthesized European and Indian elements, largely resonating with the same synthesis which was going on with the Indian people and their culture. So we also turned to shirts and suits, and this was also something which we also found in Ravi Varma's paintings. But insofar as the technique of painting, it was largely similar to the rest of them.
Sridhar wants to know if there are other instances of artists using photographs as the base for portraits.
Oh yeah, very many of them.
Yeah.
But this exploration is only about Ravi Varma. Yes, but I do know of, I mean, even many later artists, even for example, someone from the Bombay space much later, like S.M. Pandit, was using photographs. And there are instances of him.
There is speculation in the chat box whether the press was in Girgaon or in Parel. But like you rightly said, we don't know.
No, so the press started in Girgaon, went to Ghatkopar, and then went to its final place in Lonavala. There are, and because we don't know the exact thing, all of those roads are actually mentioned in volume 2. It could have been here, could have been here, could have been there. But the exact location, unfortunately, see, because this is a very intensely researched and referenced narrative, when it comes to speculation, even the speculation is done with great care.
Sharmila feels that it's not Mulgaonkar, it's Malpekar. Can you elaborate?
No, Raji by Mulgaonkar, Anjani by Malpekar are different people.
Correct.
Anjani by Malpekar was an exponent of the Bendi Bazaar Gharana and was one of the models only towards the end of Ravi Varma's career. However, Raji by Mulgaonkar and Gauri, for example, were much earlier. They were you could trace them back to as early as the late 1880s. However, Anjani by Malpekar, in her own interview, she says she met Ravi Varma only 6 years before he died, which would be circa 1900. And you must keep in mind, but by the time Anjani by Malpekar met Ravi Varma, most of his important commissions were over, except the Mysore set. And in the Mysore set, he had already come down south by then. So the association of Anjani by Malpekar with some of the earlier works is wrong.
We have a commercial person in our midst. He wants to know what was he paid for a typical portrait of a royal? Between
1,200 and it went way up to somewhere around 2,400 towards the end of his career.
Oh, big money in that day and age.
Not really, because if you look at what, see, this is the thing. If you look at, for example, the divisional archives in Mysore, and if you look only at Ravi Varma, yes, big money. But if you look at what the European artists at the same time were being paid, not much. Because they were paid almost twice or thrice as much as Ravi Varma was paid.
Vinayak wants to know if he had any linkages with the family of Govardhan Das Khattau in Mumbai.
Yes, so Govardhan Das Khattau Makanji was one of the first people who owned the Ravi Varma Press. The Ravi Varma Press began as a partnership with Khattau Makanji and Sree Raja Varma, Ravi Varma's brother. Ravi Varma's brother and Makanji were the two people who established the Ravi Varma Press. Then Govardhan Das Khattau Makanji exits the partnership. For a brief period, the Ravi Varma Press is under the sole proprietorship of Sree Raja Varma, Ravi Varma's brother, and then it gets sold to Fritz Leiher. Fritz Leiher being the German who actually was brought in 1893 to help set it up. At that point of time, he was an employee, goes on to finally become the owner of the press. The press continues in the ownership of the family all the way until 1980s when it finally gets wound up. Thereafter, after it's wound up, whatever the remnants of the press now find a place in the Hastashilpa Heritage Trust, which is in Manipal.
Okay. Ganesh, could you tell everybody where they can purchase these books?
So they are on Amazon, they're on Flipkart, they're on the White Falcon bookstore. The only volume 1 as of now.
Yeah.
As and when the others come out, yes.
And somebody wanted to have your email address. Is it okay if we share your email address?
Sure, please.
Amrita will do that in the chat box very soon. Next question. Kavisha wants to know, I'm not sure I understand it. What was the main color palette of RRV's paintings?
Very difficult
color palette.
Very difficult to imagine, but I can sort of. In fact, Gayatri Sinha, who headed the editing process through Critical Collective, she came up to me one day and said, Ganesh, so many reds. But that's when you sort of realize, yes, there are quite a lot of reds, there are quite a lot of blues. But was it the main color palette? It would be hard for me to say it. He loved this color. No, it's difficult for me to say that.
Amar is asking, under the litho prints, we see Ravi Varma Press picture and other as Anant Shivaji Desai. What's the difference?
Yes, so the Ananta Shivaji Desai, the Ravi Varma, so the Ravi Varma, again, volume 2 extensively deals with those notations. It starts with the Ravi Varma Fine Art Lithographic Press in Bombay, then it goes on to Ravi Varma Press Karli and Bombay, then it goes into Karla Lonavala, Malawi Lonavala, GIP. What is GIP? All of that is there. This is the press. The Ravi Varma Press also had a whole bunch of distributors, and their names also featured on the title strip on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion. And one of the distributors was Ananta Shivaji Desai, other of course being A.K. Joshi, and many others. So yeah, so it also tells you how the press was distributing its chromolithographs across India. So Ananta Shivaji Desai was the distributor, Ravi Varma Press was the printing press.
Quickly harking back to the previous thing that we were discussing about the location of the press, Vinayak says that there is a Govardhan Das building opposite St. Teresa's Church in Girgaon. Is it likely that it could be one of the locations of the press?
You know what I want to do? One of these days, I actually want to come down to Bombay with this photograph and try and figure out where the actual building is.
I'm sure Vinayak will be delighted to take you around,
yes.
Or Khaki would be delighted to take you around.
We should do that one day.
Yes. We are nearing the end of the questions. Can you throw some light on his famous court case in Mumbai? Briefly,
it wasn't.
I know it's a big.
Yes, it didn't happen. So, but Ravi Varma was not the accused. So what had happened was there was a Ravi Varma, Sree Raja Varma, were chaperoning Prince Martanda Varma across his tour of India. So they go to all of these places and they land into Bombay. When they land into Bombay, they are having dinner with Justice John Jardine and Justice Ranade at the Baikola Club. And that evening, Sree Raja Varma notes in his diary that on the next day, we've been invited to the Bombay High Court. So off they go to the Bombay High Court. And the prince, of course, in deference to who he was at that time, was given a place between the judges. One would imagine on the dais, but actually no, if you look at the sketch, he's seated below both of these judges. Then the notation actually goes on and says they were hearing a case of an interesting nature. And what had happened was one of the Pune dealers of pictures had a picture which could have been construed as obscene. And the judges get into this whole deliberation as to whether, so what was the picture about? It's also sort of described, it's of a woman coming out of the bath in a forest. Obviously, she was nude. So the judges actually get into a whole deliberation on whether that pose of a woman could have been construed as a classical image, like Venus de Milo or something like that, in which case it's perfectly fine, or whether it was intended to be obscene. So they actually go on to further say, look, if you actually look at the woman, she looks like a classical beauty. However, because on the branches of the tree are hanging a silken umbrella and her inner unmentionables, we construe that this image was considered to be obscene. And off he sent to the cooler. Ravi Varma witnessed it in the sense that he saw the trial, but Ravi Varma was neither an official witness and he was certainly not the accused. Right. In that court case. So as I mentioned, Ravi Varma actually sits there and sketches the court scene while his brother is sitting and making notes of actually what happened over there. My whole question was, did the case actually happen? So I went into the records. Of course, lawyers get access to court records, and the case did happen, and we also know who the accused was.
Okay. Pawan wants to know who the Draupadi Vastraharan was actually painted for.
Originally for the Gaikwad collection, for the Maharaja of Baroda, but the painting which was painted for the Maharaja is still in the Royal Gaikwad collection. And there's a copy by Rama Varma also. So they actually have two copies, one by Ravi Varma, one by Rama Varma, the son. And the first composition, which is of a horizontal format, was for the Maharaja of Baroda. And then there was a second composition, which is in a vertical format, and that was painted for the press.
Technical question in connection with your books. How do you capture what might be large paintings for publication in the books? Is it some sort of technical or medium format photography?
Oh, ouch, I should ask my designer that. But then, yeah, we did spend a lot of time and lot more money to get it right. But I think that my designer should be in a position to tell you. Whatever little I know is, yeah, we had got them on raw formats and all of that. Whatever was suitable for publication.
And a question
from technical guy.
And a question from Siddesh. Where is the original Saraswati painting house currently?
So there are many versions of Saraswati as well. You must be wondering, what is this? You ask a simple question and this guy gives you a complex answer.
Please do.
Because there's so many versions of Saraswati painted by Ravi Varma himself. The 1894, which was the first Saraswati which he painted, which was used for the chromolithograph which we see, is now in a private collection in Delhi. It's a smaller painting. It's about 20 inches by 30 inches, more or less the same size as the chromolithograph. The second large painting of the same composition, of course, is in the Royal Gaikwad collection, and it is in the Gadi Hall of the Lakshmi Vilas Palace. The second version of Saraswati, which is the smaller version, is in a private collection in Delhi. There's another version of it, which is in a private collection in Chennai. And there is one more in a private collection in Kerala.
How do you take to this myth or story that he took photos of himself posing in costume for the pictures?
Oh, it's true.
It's true.
It's true. And one of those photographs feature in volume 4.
And these would be for the males who he wanted to paint, right?
No,
Okay.
Surprises, there are more surprises, Farooq. More, I can't put it all in a 45-minute lecture.
Yes, of course. So we'll have to have a part 2.
Part several. We have 6 volumes ahead of us.
Sure. I think we are nearing the end. Prithvi wants to know, are chromist made prints another name given to oleographs or lithographs?
Oh, good Lord, no. I don't know. You see, this is the problem with even people who, Farooq, everyone has a pet peeve. I keep seeing your social media posts and you have pet peeves too. I have a pet peeve, and that is when people of assumed responsibility come out with such ludicrous words as chromist made reproduction. If you actually Google chromist, okay, even Google can't find the word.
Exactly.
Okay, the closest word to chromist is chromista, which is an algae. Okay. No, I'll tell you very frankly, somebody actually asked me this is no, it's a chromist made reproduction. I said chromist is not even a word. And then of course a reproduction, of course it is, but reproduction is such a generic word. It includes everything which happens in an IVF clinic, including the methods best left to the imagination. But what I'm trying to get to is that it is a chromolithograph. So let's just call it a chromolithograph.
Yes.
That's what it is.
One final question. Do you agree that Raja Ravi Varma had a controversial life?
No.
No.
No. Again, this is another. Every reporter who's asked me, he says, are you talking about the scandal? There is no scandal. There is history outside scandal. And you can write 6 volumes on it, Farooq. And even if you were to look at the court case, it is analytically dealt with. It speaks about what is happening in a courtroom. And it speaks about the whole understanding of the law of obscenity, right from the Hicklin case, the Hicklin test, Lady Chatterley's lover, what is happening with Satyam Shivam Sundaram. It talks about it in an analytical way. That's not scandal. And that had nothing to do with Ravi Varma. It had to do with the pictorial legacy.
One final question, I promise you. I can't help asking.
No, you can go on. I love it. See, listen, this is your opportunity to cross-examine a lawyer, so don't stop.
How many paintings would you say he would have done in his entire lifetime?
That is a very difficult thing to actually estimate, for the reason that many of them are still coming up. You must keep in mind that Ravi Varma was a sought-after artist even during his time, and people do know the value of this of his works. So, a lot of them are still surfacing. A lot of them have vanished. A lot of them, for example, which find a place in these newspaper articles, we don't know where they are. So it's very difficult for us to arrive at a figure. And I think it will, and this is something which I certainly intend doing, is that all reputed artists have to have a catalogue raisonné. We've had it with Monet, we've had it with very many other artists. And it's time that we also started working towards a catalogue raisonné of Ravi Varma, but that will take us a lot of time to do.
Did he have royal patrons other than Travancore, Baroda and Pudukkottai? So
I'll tell you the royal patrons which I was able to find were Udaipur, Baroda, Bhavnagar, Aundh, very close to you, Mysore, Travancore, Kolongodu, Reva. That's what I can comes to my mind now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We stand enlightened. If we were to believe a very famous book which came out on Ravi Varma about 2 years ago, it was like 3 or 4. I'd forgotten about Udaipur.
Udaipur, yeah, Udaipur is actually extensively covered. Yeah, there are quite a few of these royals.
Positively, the last question. Somebody wanted to know if his paintings hang in galleries overseas too.
Yes, they do. You must keep in mind that Ravi Varma's paintings were being sent abroad even during his lifetime.
I see.
They went to Chicago, they went to Antwerp, they went to London, and these are all from the catalogs. So we do know that they were there. Many of them just remained there. This is one. Two, you must also keep in mind that the Antiques and Art Treasures Act is a very new introduction. It's in 1972, 74, whatever. And a lot of these paintings went out well before then. Mostly because Ravi Varma was certainly within the custodians, they knew what the painting was. So a lot of them are abroad and entirely legally so.
Thank you very much. There are many compliments about the talk, about the details and about the pictorial representations. So that's really fascinating.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everybody enjoyed the talk. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure, Farooq.
Thank you, everybody, and all the best, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Namaste.
Ganesh.
Namaste.